Yeah, I mean, do you know anything about? To my knowledge, I've talked to some people. They said that there's a pretty intense like fundamentalist Christian movement that's like kind of underground that's going on. Like, do you know anything about that?
I don't know that I don't know how much I would use the term underground, but I would say that in the later period of time of the Trump movement and kind of now in the, I guess what I'd call the post MAGA movement, the people who participated in MAGA who are still doing activism, there was a strain of um, kind of connecting right wing politics with Christianity in a way that is fairly unique. So that has been something that's been happening generally since essentially Reagan. But it really came across a lot in that 2020 time period where you had, at the Million MAGA March, people chanting Christ is King and so forth. And so it's interesting to me, especially because I think it's a good example almost of what we were talking about before about how Trump kind of could represent whatever to whoever.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I was covering the campaigns, so 2016 before the election, I actually went to a conference called Faith and Freedom, and it was basically a very conservative Christian conference. And then primary candidate Trump spoke at it. And it was very interesting to me because I've been at other Trump events, and I had been at other Trump events by then. And Trump's audience really liked him largely because of how profane he could be about politics in a way that other politicians wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
That he'd be, he'd say that like, oh, it's bullshit, and everyone was like, wow, right? He called, Ted Cruz the P word, which I don't want to repeat because I don't want people to like, cut it, whatever. But at a rally, and then he said that he was quoting, but he said it out loud, and his audience loved it, and whatever, right? But at the Faith and Freedom Conference, right, that was a speech I basically haven't seen used archivally pretty much ever since then. And it wasn't because it wasn't interesting. He was just much more somber. It sounded like he was trying to kind of imitate what he thought that a Christian conservative sounded like. And I realize there might be people listening to this right now who perceive Trump as a Christian conservative himself. But you're laughing as I say that. Right?
That's funny. Yeah.
But I mean, during that time period, Trump was going to church sometimes to kind of be photographed going to church. And, he was interviewed and it was asked, like, do you like the Old Testament better or the New Testament? He was like, I like them about the same. They were like, do you have a favorite verse? He's like, that's very personal.
Oh, my God, dude. What a great answer. What a great answer.
But at Faith and Freedom, the point that I was sort of getting to was he just approached it with a much more somber tone, speaking to that particular audience. I remember he, like, the kind of moments that he sounded like he was a little bit more flair. He's like, we are going to bring Jesus back into school. Like, it didn't sound like something that he had. It didn't seem very foundational to his platform. It didn't seem like it was an extremely important thing to him, but this was him trying to court a very significant portion of the Republican voting base. And I think that to some extent, he relied on Pence really to bring in the, that kind of person in the end. What's interesting now is that, Pence was sort of whittled off of the Trump coalition. At this point, Pence's political aspirations may have hit kind of a dead end because of his refusal to stick with Trump in the kind of plot to stay in the presidency, despite the results being kind of counted, obviously, the opposite way.
Yeah.
And Pence feeling that he had a constitutional duty not to interfere with that. But at this point now, if Trump runs again, he'd have to basically pick a different vice president and so forth. And so it would be very interesting to see if he was looking for another conservative Christian kind of person like that, or whether he would choose like a true Trump loyalist who is, like, congratulations, Don Jr. Do you want to be the vice president?
Oh, Jesus.
Of course, I'm kidding about that, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes, assuming he does run again.
So during when he was on his way out, and I said, there's a caveat. I never loved him more. Everyone's like, he's so bad. I'm like, dude, I related to him. I related to that man that is just just grasping at power, because there's a side of me that's like a megalomaniac, just a crazy person. I was like, I wouldn't want to give up power either. I would be using every trick in the book to stay in power. So I felt like I never related to the man more during his.
God, if you ever run for office,
do not
not
vote for me. Like,
no, I do not vote for Rick. I will personally put him down if he tries to run for office.
Do not vote for me. I would be a horrible president. I mean, I think I would be awesome, but like, it would be a dictator. I would be benevolent dictator. Yeah, I could tell you about Pan American.
Didn't you say you're a libertarian?
I know.
Take over the world and then leave everyone alone.
Oh, here's the thing, man. I'm obsessed with empire. Like in like from a historical, it's like, okay, like, all jokes aside, I do not agree.
Typical libertarian. You love power, but you don't want to say it.
Hold on. All jokes aside here, this is very important. I'm on a bit of a tirade here, but when I look at Putin, I do not agree with him invading Ukraine. I think it's awful. It's atrocious. But on one,
you're about to say but.
There is a side of me that's like, I get it. Like, he's just like, you know what? I want this. I'm gonna take it. Like, from a historical context, we admire, at least I do, empires, military history. I'm a giant military. Like, I look at Genghis Khan and the Mongol and the Horde, right? That was amazing. You look at Alexander the Great, amazing. Some of the pharaonic dynasties, amazing. The Yuan dynasty, all these things, they're all bad people. They're all terrible. They saw something, they wanted, and they fucking took it. They took a bunch of loot, slaves back, and then they got rich from doing that. It's interesting if one views yourself like if you're Putin, you're like, you know what, why not? Why can't I have an empire to this day? It's just interesting that one person could make the decision, said, I want to invade. I think that's fascinating. Again, I disagree, but like, who wouldn't want to be in that position to be able to do something like that? Don't ever vote
How
for
did
me.
you feel when Trump was floating the idea of purchasing Greenland? Did that make you feel any sort of way?
So actually, funny story, he's not the first president to do that. Did you know that?
Oh.
Yes,
tell me about that.
I believe John pulled this up because we're gonna dig in way back. I believe Truman offered to purchase Greenland from Denmark because it would be tactically, it's a great place to have bases and whatnot. Like, we really have always wanted that. Go ahead.
So there have been 4 proposals by the United States to buy Greenland. The first was William Stewart, the Secretary of State, in 1867. Then the American ambassador to Denmark, Maurice Francis Egan, in 1910. And then in 1946, U.S. Senator Owen Brewster brought it up.
I thought one of our, type in president tries to buy, Truman tries to buy Greenland. I thought he did.
I will look on
it was true. Was it Harry? Yeah, Harry S. Truman. He dropped the bomb. Okay, I think it was him. But
1946. His administration tried. They offered Denmark $100 million in gold.
Yeah, to buy Greenland. Okay, I knew I wasn't fucking going crazy.
That sounds like a pretty respectable deal.
I think we should. Dude, I would love to own Greenland. I mean.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, right. But strategically, it's a great base. It would be a great military base to have. But I didn't know Trump offered to buy Greenland. What was his reasoning?
He brought up the idea, and it was interesting because I remember this was something that I think wasn't taken extremely seriously, and I remember like a lot of jokes were made about how he just wants like a new place for like golf courses and things like that. So I don't honestly, from memory, I don't remember a whole lot of like serious debate taking place over the subject.
Okay, yeah, I mean, he's a character. I think it's not the best for America. I think that we're a little bit too fragile and the division that it would cause. So I'm hoping he doesn't run. I think we're kind of screwed, and I think that you're going to get a lot of interesting content when this kicks off. But outside of that, all jokes aside, don't ever vote for me. That's number one. But